Alrighty, so hey, I was asked, what about Mythic Plus? Because I kind of only talked about Raid, and honestly, that's fair. Mythic Plus is something that is a repeatable content that you and me and many other people will probably spend more time doing Mythic Plus than doing Raid. So it is fair to talk about Mythic Plus, and we should do that. First, we'll talk about the different builds you can run. We'll talk about big stretch, man. Oh yeah. We'll talk about arms. We'll talk about fury. We'll talk about the couple builds you can run and look at, and then I kind of want to talk about arms versus fury in general, because I think that's another topic of discussion regarding DPS warrior and Mythic Plus already. So first and foremost, we have this, which is the Bladestorm build variant. How this build works is essentially you are wanting to do as many cleaves and whirlwinds within the Bone Grinder time period. You'll be getting Bone Grinder every time you Bladestorm, and you'll be Bladestorming off of your avatar and off of just normally casting Bladestorm, so you have two windows of this. I'm a bit constrained on points. If I had one additional point, I would love to put it like here in Reaping Swings, for example. It is possible that instead, I mean, I can just do this. I don't know why I didn't think of that. But this is essentially what would be your Bladestorm Mythic Plus variant. One of Arms' strength is essentially mass AoE. But the biggest problem with Arms is Arms can mass AoE or Arms can priority damage. It can do one of the two, it can't do both. And that holds it back. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So this is the Bone Grinder variant that I think might have potential to be ran. We have to run Sudden Death to work with our tier sets. We'll go over our tier set bonus here. Rend damage increased by 30% and chance to trigger Sudden Death. Sudden Death also causes your next execute to cut deeply, causing the target to bleed for 50% of the damage of the execute and trigger a Thunderclap that deals 100% damage. The Thunderclap is the more important part in terms of Mythic Plus. Obviously, you get priority damage, with the execute bleed and a Sudden Death, but realistically, the Thunderclap, spreading more Rends, just doing more AoE damage is the more important part. But you have to take Sudden Death for the tier set to even work. There is also another discussion whether or not you'd be taking something like Fueled by Violence or Ignore Pain. In hierarchies, even though people don't like the button, you'll generally probably take Ignore Pain, because if you're not getting one shot, you can generally get healed up just fine. So the overall throughput of healing of Fueled by Violence is not necessarily as important as essentially not dying, because you can't get healed through bleeds if you're dead. So that's the topic point between those two. But the whole way this build just revolves around is you're cleaving as much as you can. You put whirlwinds in. If you're focusing more on full AoE, you'd probably go Seismic Reverberation over a point in Cruel Strikes, just because of the increased whirlwind damage with Bone Grinder. So you just cleave, whirlwind, cleave, overpower, cleave until it was done. Then you would Bladestorm again, get the Bone Grinder buff back, as well as you have this Bone Grinder window with Hurricane. So it's a pretty strong AoE-centric build. There is a different build that you can go, which is this, where we will go Warlord's Torment. We will get rid of all of these talents. We'll go Tides of Blood and Skull Splitter, and instead of, we'll probably still take Cleave just for overall throughput, but then Executor's Precision just to have more execute damage, right? Let me mute that real quick so we're not getting pings. But this is also another variant. I'm honestly not a fan of Skull Splitter. I think Skull Splitter is decent, and it's more of like a single target kind of thing. You can cleave Skull Splitter with improved sweeping strike, or just with sweeping strikes. But the biggest problem I have is Skull Splitter is just one target, right? You hit the one target, and that's what you get. If Skull Splitter AoE'd and made everything bleed faster, okay, we're talking. We're in business. Your positioning matters. Where you're facing your camera matters. If it's a frontal, like a cleave, that could be interesting, right? But it's not. It is a single target boost. It is decent for air priority damage, and this is something you'd probably build or take on like a tyrannical week potentially. You'd probably not necessarily need the throughput of uproar, and you run curl strikes instead. And that's kind of what you're looking at with arms. Because our tier set bonus honestly doesn't change a lot about the class. You're not doing anything special or specific. You're probably just either running one of those two builds. You have priority. You can probably shake some stuff up around to maybe like free some stuff up, but realistically, that's kind of what you're looking at with arms. We'll delete this. Now we'll talk about Fury. And Fury has a couple different builds. Because our tier set changes fundamentally how we're actually playing the game, right? This is what we're looking at for a standard Mythic Plus build, right? Where we just have a lot of throughput, that kind of thing. The moment we get 2-piece is where our build becomes Odin's Fury centric, and it's something that we're probably going to be focusing on a bit more. Before I go into the Odin's Fury variant, what could happen is like in tier 29, so Vault of the Incarnates, our tier didn't really do much of anything for us, and we didn't build specifically around it. Early on in the patch, if you're farming Mythic Plus a lot, Mythic Plus is going to drop 470 item level at plus 20, right? That is an insane boost. That boost is so high, you're going to be replacing fucking everything that you have if you're farming it before you go into raid, right? So if you're farming stuff before you're going into raid, what you're realistically going to be doing is running our tier 29 set. We're going to get rid of Bloodthorn and Cold Steel Hot Blood. And we'll be running something like this. It is a very generalized, works well with just pure stats build. Our tier set wasn't very strong in Vault, but it also lets you do AoE and have Execute. It's decently nice. I actually am a big fan of this build personally. So this is probably what you'll run if you essentially replace all of your tier pieces with just item level gear. But once we get to 2-piece, right? Let's look at the warrior set 2-piece. The Fury 2-piece. Odin's Fury deals 50% increased damage and causes your next 3 Bloodthirst to deal 150% additional damage and have 100% critical strike damage. Okay, that's pretty big damage, right? So the moment we get this, it changes most of our build. First and foremost, bye-bye Ravager, bye-bye Onslaught. I will miss you. We are going Reckless Abandon, because Reckless Abandon on the PTR buffs our next Bloodthirst or Raging Blow. But because we're running this Odin's Fury variant, we're actually going to be taking Annihilator. So we're going to be taking Odin's Fury. There's a discussion between Titanic Rage and Dancing Blades, but it only increases the damage by 10%. If you're doing mass AoE, maybe, but I don't really like this. I prefer the Dancing Blades priority damage, on top of the fact that we're going to be running Annihilator, which even gives more value to Dancing Blades. It'll probably be something more like this. We'll be removing all of our Raging Blow talents. So because we are removing all of our Raging Blow-centric talents, that frees us up a couple more points. Then we'll be going here. Something like this, right? And this, the moment we get our 2-piece, is what we'll probably be running. And sorry, big stretch again. Feeling, I should have woke up and just stretched, dude. But this build has priority damage. Once we get our 4 set, the Blood Craze talent becomes even better as we're reducing the cooldown of our Odin's Fury by 2.5 seconds. That can also be cleaved. One thing to note is the 2 set is 100% crit against its primary target. So what that means is that, let's say you get your Whirlwind buff up, you have your damage buff from the 2 set, you have your 100% chance to crit, and you hit your target with the cleave Bloodthirst. That means your first target is going to get crit and then the other targets will roll the individual chance to crit. With having Blood Craze and having our 4 set, we're reducing the cooldown of Odin's Fury. Odin's Fury will be using a lot, and Odin's Fury's damage will be buffed by our 2 set, and Odin's Fury, most importantly, is uncapped and does additional damage based on Thunderous Words. So Odin's Fury is probably going to do a fuckload of damage. Like, a lot of damage in higher end Mythic Plus and AoE situations. I'm really looking forward to it, actually. I was pretty doomer on it because I thought Annihilator was super lame, but the more I think about it, the more interesting it is. So I'm actually looking forward to running this tier set in Mythic Plus next season. And now that we have the base build, and then we have this build that we'll probably be running the moment you get your 2 set for tier bonus, now we need to talk about Fury versus Arms in terms of the Mythic Plus setting in general. The biggest problem with Arms is you don't get to have priority damage and good AoE. You just don't, because of how the class is. Like I showed you, you can either spec like the Bladestorm variant or you can spec the Skull Splitter variant, but you're not getting the best of both worlds in any scenario or situation. You just don't have enough points. On top of that, one of the biggest downfalls of Arms is it's actually pretty weak. It doesn't have, like, in Rage Regeneration is a far better defensive. We have general 10% damage reduction as Fury, and through Arms, one other issue, right? If we're playing Arms, you have, let's say, 540k health. The moment you equip a second two-hander, you gain 46k health, which is only going to be even more problematic when you're having higher tier weapons, where you're going to be gaining even more health by having a second weapon. You are infinitely tankier with just having a second weapon because of all the stamina it gives you, right? And when living mechanics becomes more important as you get into higher keys, it's basically a no-brainer. On top of the 10% DR, on top of the self-heal, you have a secondary self-heal, and the fact that Arms, just to survive, is probably going to be running Ignore Pain over anything else. To me, Fury is already winning this, by far. Arms may have some specific niche use cases, but Fury, far and above, looks way better. Not to mention, like I said, Arms has a priority damage build or an AoE build. It can do one or the other. It doesn't have the ability to do both, yet Fury gets to do both. All of Fury's AoE damage is based off how much single target it does, too. Because how Whirlwind works with Cleave. It cleaves off your main target onto the alt target, right? 55% of the additional damage. So a single target affects its AoE. And now that we're running Odin's Fury, and we're going to be reducing the cooldown of Odin's Fury a lot through Blood Craze, and because we're running Titanic Torment, sorry, I forgot to change this over. Torment means whenever you cast Avatar, it also casts Odin's Fury. So now you have 2 sets of Odin's Fury. You're just shredding into a pack. You have tons of AoE damage. You have tons of priority damage because of Dancing Blades and Annihilator. You also have execute damage with Vicious Contempt. And because your build is single target focused that does AoE, you not only have priority damage, decent boss damage, but you're going to have a lot of AoE damage, and between Thunderous Roar and Odin's Fury, your AoE damage is uncapped. I do not see a world where Arms is going to be better than Fury in Mythic Plus. If not for the reason that Fury just is tankier, and you need to be able to live mechanics. Just that as Fury, you have the availability of both priority and single target and AoE damage, right? So I just don't see a world where Arms is going to be your go-to for Mythic Plus. That might change in Raid, but it's how rigid the specs are with Arms. This just seems way, way better to me in almost every regard for Mythic Plus. Some people might not like that. Do I think arms is completely unviable? No. If you're just doing 20s and you're chilling and you're getting your weekly box and stuff, literally play whatever the fuck you want, man. It doesn't matter. Early on, it might matter a little bit, but literally just play whatever you want. Play arms, play Fury, who cares? But when you're getting into hierarchies where living is far more important, where having priority damage is far more important, the mobs, regardless of fort or tyrannical, are just going to live longer in these hierarchy level situations. So having both priority and AoE damage, which Fury will have, it's just going to be better. I thought Annihilator was super lame when I thought about it initially, but honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to it. It's a different play style. It'll be kind of interesting. So I think it'll be decent. I think it'll be good. I think Fury will be the main way to go for Mythic Plus. And since I was asked my thoughts on Warrior Mythic Plus for next season, there they are. It's possible I may have missed some things. I may have missed some things regarding how good Skull Splitter is, because personally, I just don't enjoy Skull Splitter. I just don't. I'm not a fan of it. I just don't like the button. I don't know why. There's just something about it I don't like. So I could be biased against arms in general, but I think the flexibility of Fury will far and away be what's more important in those Mythic Plus settings. So thank you for watching. I hope you have a good one, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.